Hello, everyone. If you weren't in the Power Automate session, I will go through my spiel this time too. My name is Nick Miller. I am a senior cloud solution architect at Microsoft, specifically in the Power Platform, and specifically to education customers here at Microsoft. So, um, a little about myself here. Find my can't live present PowerPoint Live is not presenting for me, so I have to do it old school. Um, so a little about myself, been in the IT world 15, 16 years, maybe a little more, just I lose count. Have been a SharePoint architect for years, and then about 7 or 8 years ago, transitioned to kind of do some Power Platform stuff because I was an InfoPath guru and did SharePoint Designer workflows, did tons of customizations and electrifying paper forms and bringing them into the digital age, and moving on to the next stage in digital evolution, looking at this whole Power Apps thing, and really enjoyed it. So dove directly into it when I came to Microsoft here 5 years ago, and have never looked back. A little about myself: I'm a travel guru, and a love gaming on Xbox and playing board games as well with friends and family, cards, etc. Driven cross country 5 times. Have been through Tuscaloosa a handful of times on the way to see cousins that go to Auburn, and he's in graduate school there. And then other family, majority of my family live in Mississippi and St. Louis, but I've lived in Portland, Oregon, Chicago, St. Louis, Nashville. Played a little bit up in New England, but I currently reside in Orlando, Florida. I've been a personal chef for over 20 years and love throwing dinner parties for friends and family. I've, cooked a 7-course meal for my closest 100 friends through various organizations in the past. And my wine collection, it's about 250 bottles total, maybe a little bit more. Had a shipment come in the other day, and date ranging back over about 25 years. Earliest is the like 2001-ish kind of thing. So absolutely love that. Born and raised in Memphis, really, and big barbecue guy. So I do all kinds of stuff on a smoker, and anything dealing with if you can put it on a smoker, I'll cook it. Right, I've baked cakes on a smoker, so kind of fun to see that. So this session is about Power Apps. This is going to be isn't going to be near as long as the last session for slides, just because it's a little bit more compact. There's not as many intricacies as Power Automate has, but kind of a quick intro as to what Power Apps are. Right, it's it's a way to package applications very quickly, surrounding around the Microsoft products, and being able to connect to using leverage the Power Platform to connect to your data wherever it is, whether it's in SharePoint or an Excel file, or SQL Server or ServiceNow, or on a hosted by a third-party site such as ServiceNow, or Confluence with Jira, and ADP, all kinds of different ERP systems out there. The key part of it is that they call it no code, low code, and code first are all welcome, right? They call the Power Platform and Power Apps being a low code, no code situation. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because there is a syntax language associated with Power Apps, similar to how we would build formulas inside of Excel. But we're not having to write .NET to actually build the framework of our apps or our controls. We drag and drop them, we put them in there. But we can use functions to be able to do a lot of things within our applications very quickly. Power Platform has a lot of, as you can see in this little, this thumb here, this circle here, it's about a year and a half old, right? Notice here we have Power Virtual Agents that's been replaced with Copilot Studio. But there's a lot of parts that make up the Power Platform. The key core of them are Power Apps, Power Automate, Copilot Studio for being able to build custom chatbot agents, and then of course Power BI to be able to bring all of that data into a rich report. Power BI really is its own thing. Microsoft Fabric, being able to leverage a lot of data analytics, but using Power BI as the reporting tool for end users to consume. Power Apps is a visual, they call it a pixel perfect visual app designer, meaning that, as you can see here in this little video, we can drag and drop things directly onto a canvas, drag it down. I'm having flashbacks to Microsoft front page back in the day, where we could build websites really quickly and use like a drag and drop method to be able to add functionality without having to code HTML or JavaScript or any kind of CSS. We could just right click and click on things. So we have that same type of functionality with Power Apps, being able to create Canvas apps very quickly without a ton of heavy lifting and not a ton of heavy coding. It's more clicking buttons and changing properties to have the data populate how we want it to do. We can connect directly to your line of business applications quickly and securely with a natively integrated with Microsoft 365, right? So we're talking SharePoint, Outlook, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, and of course Dynamics 365, which is what the Dataverse, is the foundational database of Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. Taking a unique approach to business applications. So being able to integrate with things that we already may have in place, whether it's as simple as applications and utilizing Visual Studio. There we go. Talking is hard today. Visual Studio to be able to maintain controls for our pro app developers, to AI assisted experience with the use of Copilot and being able to build and adjust our apps as we're building. We have pre-built components, right? So things that we can add into, such as galleries, to be able to see a list of data. So whether it's a SharePoint list or a SQL table, we can actually see all that information very quickly by clicking a single control. And as I mentioned earlier with the low code section of this, is that all Power Apps are built using what's called PowerFX, which is an open source formula language for expressing logic. Very similar to writing code, writing functions over in Excel, being able to, do lookups and things of that nature. The syntax is a little bit different, just like every coding language, but the methodology is very similar between whether you learn C# and C++ to whether you're doing Python, PowerShell. The methodologies are very similar, but it's the syntax and the order of things that we have to put in that are different between the two to make them more robust. There are two main types of Power Apps here. We have Canvas apps, which is what we're going to showcase and look at today. It's the easiest way to build and customize and have a rich and useful end user experience to be able to connect and build applications very quickly on the fly. The other type of app are known as model-driven apps, and this is what you're going to see through any kind of Dynamics 365 deployment, such as Dynamics 365 Sales, Field Service, Customer Service. Any of those deployments, they're what are known as leveraging data models. So we're looking at Dataverse tables, right? That relational database foundation that we can build and connect to. And our apps are going to natively build and map from those data models. So we're not doing as much customization as we will in Canvas apps, but we don't have to do much setup either because it comes natively with forms and data views. And so all we have to do is say, oh, connect to this table, and stuff is already there. And we just need to drag and drop our forms. We kind of have, they're very blocky. So you can have like 3 columns, a header, a footer kind of thing. So if we built SharePoint pages with web part pages way back when, it's that same similar type of interface where things are set in areas, not necessarily being super easy to be able to customize how the area fits, what happens to the data, can we change the color, that sort of thing. So it's more data driven to where if we have hundreds of records of data and multiple tables connected, we can quickly put this into an app and take a look at it and be able to push into a testing phase or even a production phase fairly quickly, versus the Canvas app, which we're looking to make very richful and have a nice user experience across not just a web browser on your computer, but also on your mobile devices, tablets, phones, whether we're using old school iPhone 2s and 3s with itty bitty screens to, the iPhone X's and Samsung Galaxy S20, 8, whatever they are now with massive screens and everything in between. So we're going to go into some concepts and terminology. And if anybody has a question, please come off mute, interrupt me. It's totally fine. I'm not going to hurt my one feeling. I got it safe in a closet. So where are Power Apps stored? So just general kind of information here. They're stored inside environments within the Power Platform. So we have, as we can see here, let me grab a little laser pointer. As we can see here, kind of like what's the block style. So we have the Microsoft 365 tenant. That's the University of Alabama tenant. That's everything about Microsoft in the box. Within that, we have power platform environments, and this is where Power Apps are stored. The default environment is usually where everybody's going to go to first time. Every time you click on it, this, that, and the other, unless you've been told to do something different, it's always going to go to that default environment because we all have access to be able to create Canvas apps and flows using our standard connectors, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, with our Microsoft Office licensing. So being able to use SharePoint and Outlook and OneDrive and Excel Online to be able to connect to our data and bring it into an app rather than having to just go to a SharePoint list or fill out a table or click this Excel document and update with your data. We can just do it directly with a Power App instead. And so environments store the application itself. If we're building Dataverse tables, it'll store the data in the Dataverse tables there. But it's made to connect to wherever your data is. So if it's in SharePoint, if it's at ServiceNow, if it's in Jira, however you want to say it, it lives there. And the only thing that lives in Power Apps is the Power App itself there within the environment. What are connectors? Connectors are things we connect to, right? Pretty self-explanatory, right? Well, what it is a collection of APIs to different services, right? So we can kind of see here with some kind of icons, this male one, that's Outlook. This one that kind of looks like the Office logo, right? That's Office 365 users. There's the Twitter, now X logo. This is an RSS feed. This is Dropbox here. This is SharePoint. This is secure HTTP. There are over 1,200 different connectors that we can connect to via APIs to be able to get and ingest data, work with data, and update data. Apps can leverage the pre-built actions and triggers within those apps. Within any Canvas app, we have what are called controls. And controls are the things that we actually add to the app that people click on, right? How they showcase data. So here's an example over here of some popular controls, right? We have a text box, we have icons, right? Little plus, little X for add or cancel, little happy face to leave feedback, right? We have a gallery that gives us a list of information, date and combo boxes. We have buttons and radio buttons and check boxes. We can put images and all kinds of different things we can do in there, but those are called controls, and those are the UI elements that people interact with. There are two types of controls. There are classic and modern controls. The modern controls are the ones that are more streamlined with the business use case. Not necessarily about what the data is, but it standardizes the look and feel. Okay, and when in my demo, I'm going to do a couple of things where I create an app where it uses all classic stuff, and then I'm going to do one that creates from the same list, and we're going to create it using modern controls in a modern method to be able to show the differences between the two. Modern controls, they're based off the Microsoft Fluent 2 design system. They're simpler, they're built better, they have a quicker response time, they're cleaner, right? So their classic controls, that's coming back from like 2017. And when we initially rolled all this stuff out, and then about 4 years ago, they started rolling out these modern controls and was like, oh, well, what for? Oh, well, it streamlines our radio buttons to be a specific font size, and it reduces our white space, has everything in a dark gray to light gray kind of contrast so that we're accessible and ADA compliant. Making our check boxes and our toggles here, like with this little label, they're not, massively big. They're not like sitting there like taking up 4 inches wide on your screen. If you're on a phone, that's horrible. Like you have zero ability to be able to do anything. You got this big old toggle that you have to hit. You don't even see what it says. And so using modern controls is a way that we can ensure standardization, and it just looks good. It looks a lot cleaner, simpler, and easy to use. And people don't get confused. And for a developer, we don't have to worry about if we want to change branding, change a color. We don't have 40 different properties on this date selector or this drop down combo box that we have to go in and change to map to our theme. And I'll showcase that as well. And by properties, every control has properties. And so everything so as you can see here on this button control, just a button, right? You just click on it. Well, the thing is that as you can see, we're at the bottom of this list. There's probably about 20, 25 different properties on a button dealing from the X and Y coordinate. Where's this thing sitting on the screen, right? X is all the way to the left is 0. All the way to the width is however wide it is. If we're using 13 by 66 as a width, we put X 1366, the button's going to be off the screen, off onto the right. We can control that. We can control what the text value is. As we can see here, we can control the colors, the background colors. When you hover on a button, what happens? We can change that to have, instead of purple, let's make it, drab yellow or something, and change the text to black when we hover over it, something along those lines. Whether or not it's visible or not, if we want to add a tool tip to where when somebody hovers over it, it has a little pop-up that says, ooh, click here to press the button. Lots of different properties that we can do, and every control has different properties. So whether we're talking about galleries, screens, containers, buttons, drop down, radio buttons, check boxes, text boxes, labels, all those, they have all their own properties associated with each control that we can use PowerFX syntax, that function language, to be able to modify or dynamically change based on other information. How do we organize content? We use containers. This is used within our modern design concepts with Power Apps. Have been out for, like I said, a couple, 3 years. It's only gotten better with time, but this helps us build responsive applications without having to do a ton of code work, right? Writing a lot of functions and arithmetic to say, hey, I want this thing to be as wide as the app, but wait, I have this gallery sitting next to a form. Now I need to say, okay, the form needs to be however, whatever the X value is for the gallery plus the width plus a spacing, and then that's my X minus the whole width of the app. Beforehand, we had to type all that out and type all that information in, because Formula PowerFX it allows arithmetic, so we can get what the whole width is minus this, and then that's our value. We don't have to do that anymore. We can use containers and set things up in areas, and when we add controls, we can drop them in and it will natively span to that container size in that area. So that doesn't matter if we're using a 50-inch monitor to look at this app, or if we're looking at an iPhone 3 and looking at the exact same app, we're going to have a consistent size on our application. And a little bit more about our PowerFX. Formula language is kind of an example of what this looks like. We use PowerFX in the properties, right? We have a formula bar within all of our Canvas apps, and we have our property value over here in a dropdown equals. We see our little FX, very similar to Excel when we had okay, what cell are we in? Equals FX on down the line. And we can type functions. There's a whole slew, and I can provide that in the chat window of all the different PowerFX functions that we have available in Canvas apps and that we can use with PowerFX, whether it's defining a color value or setting global variables and telling it to navigate to a screen whenever a button is clicked. And that, my friends, brings us to our demo time. So those are the key concept, very high level, kind of the things that make up Canvas apps for us to be able to start diving in to our demos to take a look at what we can do inside of Power Apps. Any questions before we kind of dive in? Any thoughts? Don't be shy. It's okay. Right. So we're going to dive right in. I'm going to move my sharing thing way over here so I don't accidentally click it and cancel the sharing. So first thing you're going to do, typically when you come in, right, you'll go to office.com and it's going to load up into something like this, right? Whether mine's on Copilot right now, so it goes right into the Copilot chat, but you'll come here to home and there's, files and documents and all that kind of jazz. And so what you can do is you can click the waffle in the top left and we can go to Power Apps. Just click that, it should open inside of a new tab. I'm gonna drag this kind of over. I'll leave it here, it's totally fine. And it's going to bring over here. And for most users, if you've never been in Power Apps, like I had mentioned earlier, I don't know if environment routing is turned on in developer environments, but 9 times out of 10, if we don't have any of that set up, you are natively going to come to what is called the default environment. This is where everyone has the ability to create Power Apps and Power Automate flows automatically with your Office 365 license. And so if you do have a place that you are supposed to be developing in, so say we work in HR, if we work for the College of Pharmacy or the College of Engineering, right? And we have dedicated development spaces over here, we want to double check that. So up in the top right, you'll click that environment right there, and it'll give you a list of environments that you have access to. And if you don't see anything, default is cool. We'll just stay there. Okay, we're going to jump over to this developer environment over here that I have set up because I have a lot of stuff built over there already. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through a couple different ways of building things. And so first, one of the easiest ways, I just have a SharePoint site that I have over here. And in fact, let me see, is this one a good one? Yeah, yeah, I think this one's good. And so I have this one kind of set up for student organizations, right? And looking at for like approvers for different things, but I have kind of things set up with a couple different organizations. And is it a faculty advisor, president, provost, etc. And so this is just a SharePoint list. And so the first thing I'm going to do without ever going to Power Apps, right, is that from SharePoint, I'm going to create an app from this list. So here's SharePoint. I'm on my list. I'm going to click Integrate and mouse over Power Apps. And what I want to do is say create an app. You never want to do this customized form because that customized the list form on the SharePoint list itself and with a Power App, and it's embedded with that list. So I highly recommend that you don't do that unless you're really just changing like fonts and colors. But the goal of anytime we're creating an application, we never give the end users, access to the database. Right. So if we're building some type of solution that allows users to be able to interact with our student information system, we're not going to give them access to that database. We're going to build an application, a user interface for them to be able to view the records that they need to be able to view, edit, update, add, whatever needs to happen. But it's going to happen through the application, not directly on the SQL Server or the Dataverse table, wherever that information is stored. So I'm going to click Create an App. And what this is going to do, it's going to open up into a new tab. It's going to default over to whichever default environment is set to do that. Usually it's the default. And it's going to create a classic Canvas app. This is what we've been using since pretty much 2017, 2017-ish, 2018, for being able to create a Canvas app on the fly directly from a SharePoint list, ready to use within roughly a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just kind of depends on if the hamsters on the internet decide to take a break or not. So, okay, so as we can see, if I click this little preview, I have a Canvas app. And can everybody see the app okay? Do I need to zoom in some?
I think it looks good.
Yeah, it doesn't. In this preview, it doesn't matter. I can change the fonts to be bigger. But as we can see, we have 5 records over here, right? And our app has the exact same 5 records. I'm like, okay, well, I can click on those and like, okay, here's my information out of the box. Like, it's not exactly pretty, right? I mean, we have, the default kind of Outlook blue, but it's usable, right? We can read it, we can consume the information, we can click edit here, and we can update some stuff over here, right? And so for this faculty advisor for ACLU, I'm gonna change the form that it's connected to. I'm gonna add form 3, and I'm gonna remove form 1. And notice it has attachments just built directly. Whatever was there and has values, that's what's in our edit form. Okay, I'm gonna click save. And notice this changed. And if I click my back arrow here, it doesn't show our forms, but we can see it over here. But I'm gonna jump back over to SharePoint and hit refresh. And then so our faculty advisor for ACLU now is form 3 rather than form 1. Okay, so it's an instantaneous connection between the two. With that, and I'm going to go to this edit form to kind of show the properties, right, for any type of control. And we were talking about a combo box. And these are all classic controls. And how do you tell the difference? Big, lots of white space. And not necessarily because it's white, there's just a lot of open space between things. These text boxes are much larger. And we're going to create an app that is using the modern method on this same list so we can compare them side by side. But here, I've clicked on this lookup, right? And this is the person group lookup field. So if I were to pop up into play here, there's Amber Rodriguez, there's me on down the line, there's Adelaide, I don't know, ADIL, Adil. It's a person group lookup field from SharePoint, from the SharePoint list. Nothing special, just a person group lookup field. And so when I click on that, on this specific control, I have all kinds of different properties over here on the right. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so the properties are a little bit bigger. There we go. And so notice it has a value. Okay, so if we scroll down here on the left, we have this this tree view over here that tells us, hey, what's inside of our app? We have screens, we have galleries, we have rectangles, we have icons, text boxes, but we're in the edit screen currently. And so in our edit screen, and if I click on it here in the app and it highlights, it's going to give me breadcrumbs across the bottom here as to what it's in. So we see data card value 8, data card value 8. It's within the parent of as we go up the hierarchy is this approver data card 2. So this is a data card. It's a control that holds all of the data that's in here. So if I click on star visible, if this is a required field, it'll show up with a star. If there's an error message, it'll automatically pop up an error message. The data card value, that's whatever we're typing in. And then there's a data card key for each one of these, right? So there's my email approver. I have the exact same stuff over here. What is the data card key? That's the column name. That's the label of whatever the field we're talking about. And so when we're looking at this, we have a lot of things the product group has put together. Let's zoom out just a little bit because it's a little too much in. The product group has put in, it's like, hey, these are the most common properties people that you're gonna want to manipulate, right? So we can change the data source, right? That we can choose the field value that we're wanting to show within this. And so right now we have the image, primary text is display name, and secondary text is email. So when we click on this, it gives me that information. There's Nick, the IT guru, and then an email. As you notice, the spacing isn't exactly great. And that's probably because of the font size. But then also we have a search name, a search field. And when we click on that, it looks to that array, right? It's a person group lookup field to say, how do we want to search? Do we want to search by email? Do we want to search by display name, department? You'll never search by claim, so don't even try it. And job title, right? The thing is you can only pick one. That's kind of the downside. You can only pick one, but it's a search parameter to be able to do that. But we can display additional information here. And if we click the layout, we can change the layout. We can just say, hey, you know what? Let's just make this single. And so when I click my preview and click the drop down, all I see is one field. And typically it's whatever your search field is. Okay, and we can adjust it and change it to be something else. It could be email, etc. on down the line. And so as we continue to scroll, we have a visible option. We can toggle that off to where it's invisible, right? Here's our position, X30, Y39. But notice when I mouse over Y, it's kind of grayed out, but puts an FX. If I click on that, it automatically drives for this property, for this control to the Y property directly into the formula bar. It tells me that, hey, this position is based off a function. What function? Oh, it's taken the Y value of this control plus the height of that control plus 5 pixels. And that's going to be our Y value. So that we have like kind of a native spacing below our title for this particular control. The thing is, I could do this. I can say instead of +5, I do +50, right? And so it adds 50 pixels in between, right? Do 500, right? On down the line. And you can see kind of how you can do that and make that work, right? So We can do height, we can do width. Notice the width is parent.width minus 60, right? So it kind of everything is commonly spaced. And as we scroll through, we can change colors. But notice here we have color and we have a little paint bucket, which is our fill, right? If we click on that, it says, oh, this is our fill property. So if I want to change it to red, it does a fill on red, right? Switch it back to white. And if I want to change the color instead of what it is for black, and I want it to be orange, click out, it'll change my field, it'll change the color to orange. If I wasn't in the edit mode, it would change it to orange. Selection color, right? Chevron color. So if I change my fill to like this dark green, changes that to dark green. Like, okay, well, that's a lot of clicking that would have to do for anything with a chevron on it, a choice field, or a drop down or a combo box. I can change my font, to make it a little bit more bold, right? Use my favorite HTML font, Verdana. And on down the line, I think we're using Open Sans. You can adjust the font weight, font size, on down the line, right? We can say, hey, is this a multiple search? Click here, it says false, right? That means that, hey, can we choose multiple people in this? If I click on forms, my multiple is true because it's actually driven from the SharePoint list saying, hey, yeah, you can choose multiple things here, right? So it's based on a function and it's locked. We can allow searching, etc. on down line. So as you can see here, here's a whole bunch of other colors. Disabled, hover, pressed color. Here's a tool tip. And we got tab indexing. By default, tab indexing, if it's selectable, it'll have a 0 and it'll natively, so if we're using the keyboard to tab through, if we click in here, if I click there and I press tab, everything has 0 and it's going to go top to bottom, left to right, right? And as I keep tabbing, you can see it kind of highlight across the page, on down the line, left, right, on down the line. And if we want things to go into a certain order on a page, we can actually say that. 0 just means use the default method. So I could say, hey, this is going to be 1, 2, and then I could say, 3 for approver, 4 for form. This one's not editable, and then 5 for attachments, and then we could say 6 for that, to save, right? Rather than going way back up here at the top. And it'll follow that tab order when you're in the app itself. So that's kind of properties. That's kind of properties building from scratch, building directly from an app. The next one I'm going to do here is that I'm going to do exactly the same thing, but I'm going to use this home button. I'm going to say home, and I'm going to I'll say I want to create an app, and I'm going to start from data. And so when I do that, it's going to ask me like, hey, you can use Copilot to kind of describe what you want to do if you want to build something from scratch, or you can say, hey, I want to use existing things. Here's the thing. Create new tables. So it creates Dataverse tables, right? So if we don't have premium licensing, we can't do this one. That are created from SharePoint lists, Excel workbooks, CSV files. This middle one says, hey, I've already got tables in Dataverse that I want to create an app against. Once again, Dataverse equals premium. However, we want to connect to SharePoint. So we're going to say connect to external data. So when we click that, it asks us, here are the 3 places we can start from: Microsoft SharePoint, Microsoft Excel, and SQL Server. And so it's going to search, it automatically selects SharePoint for us. If we don't have a connection, it creates one for us. And then it says, hey, what's your SharePoint site? Well, you can paste that SharePoint site in if you want, but it also does a recent site search where you've been to different SharePoint sites. So I'm going to click on my Power Platform development site. And then when I scroll down, no matter what I click on here, it's going to show me lists over here. So I see order data, student events, and student organizations. And we connect to the organizations table. If I choose a different site like sales and marketing here, it's going to show me the lists in that particular site. So I'm going to choose Power Platform. I'm going to choose Student Org, and I'm going to click Create Item, Create App. So very similarly, when we created this directly from SharePoint, it's going to take a few seconds to kind of pull things together and create us an app. But it's going to be a completely different app, and it's going to be so much more streamlined and modern. So as you can see here, we have a completely different app compared to our other ones. I'm going to drag this one down here so we can kind of see the differences, right? I'm going to go back up here to my browse, my home screen. This is what I got. This is the classic method and classic method of being able to create. Using the modern theming and modern components and modern controls, we only have one screen, but we have lots of stuff going on here. Here's actually the edit form. Here's my gallery. Here's my search. I have a header across the top. That's pretty cool. Didn't expect that one to be there. And then I have my edit and delete icons already ready to go. But it's all on one page. I don't have to jump between 3 different screens when I'm editing a record. So if I pop in here and click on this one, oh, here's this. Now let me click edit. Now I can make my changes and click save. And if I click cancel, it brings me back here. Now I got to click back again. Well, with this one, when I click my preview, my faculty advisor, I just click the edit pencil right here, and I'm able to change from Amber to Nick. All right, those are my approvers. And change from form 3. Let's add form 2 in there as well. Oh, add form 1. We'll do all 3. Click there and click a little check mark. That's our save button. And if we pop back over to SharePoint, click a little refresh. Now we got all 3 forms, and the approver now is Nick. Okay, so, and still same list, and make any changes, just different methods of creating that app, all from a wizard. The other piece of this is, you might notice these up here. These are ways that we can view the data. So right now it says, hey, we're just going to do the window size. That makes it fully kind of responsive. If I do canvas size, it brings it down to what we depict the canvas size to be, 1366 by 768 tall. We can also say, hey, what does this look like on a phone? Remember I said iPhone 2, iPhone 3? Let's take a look at it. Don't show, thank you. And notice how I'm looking at the data and I'm able to actually see what's there. But there's only one screen. And so what it does is it natively says, hey, what size screen are we looking at and how should we organize the data? So we're in here with our gallery. We can click new, we can click search. So if I do ADV, right, there's my faculty advisors. And so I'm going to click on that one. When I click on it, it loads the record and gives me that information. When I click edit, I can come in here and add changes. Now notice here, this is a little off. I noticed this when I was building, that the width of this gallery is too wide. So I was like, okay, well, let's do that. So, width of that form. And so I'm going to select my form, and notice I'm going to click to the lowest level, which is like one of these controls here. And I'm going to expand this so you can kind of see. This left side, one screen, but as you can see, there's lots of containers. This is a side-by-side container. And so when we select that, it highlights it in the app itself as to what that is. So there's our screen. Here's our table name container, which is up here, side by side, but it's on the top. And our screen is a contain there. This is our screen. There's our screen container. So it's a vertical one. So we have things on top of each other. That's why we only have 2, right? That header, and then all this down here. So if we click on the body, we have a side-by-side, our sidebar container. If we expand that, we have another side-by-side container, which is our search, which has, if we expand that, our text input control and our search icon. And then if we click on the next container, that's the next little slide. So we have a new icon and with a label that says new. Then we have a separator that kind of gives us a little bit of space. and then our gallery, right? So this is the way that it uses these different types of containers to be able to organize your data to where if I were to say, okay, here's my container and I want to insert something, I just click my insert button, my little plus sign over here, and say I want to, let's add a button. It automatically adds it to the bottom down here. And then when I click on that, there's all kinds of things I can do over here. We can rename it from the text. We can say, search SQL, right? Pretend we're saying, hey, if you click this, we're going to search SQL for the same stuff, right? We can add an icon to this, all right? We can put it, and it adds that little thing in there, but it's kind of small. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's kind of figure this out. What's our vertical alignment, right? Top, middle, bottom, kind of what the text is going to do. Is it going to be centered? Is it going to be right justified for the center, size, and position? And as we scroll down here, notice we have a width of 96. We have a flexible height. We're going to go ahead and turn on, and notice it kind of just made itself big. It's like, okay, I don't know if I want it that big. And so I'm going to say, hey, let's make the height 50 pixels. So, okay, that looks good. Alignment by container, we can say set by container. Right now it's in the left. We can make it centered. We can make it right justified. Or we can make it the entire width of the container, which is what I like to see. The other thing over here, we can say, oh, let's change that alignment. Let's make it centered, right? So we have a button at the bottom very quickly that allows us to do what we want it to do. And notice we have colors, but they're kind of, they're blank, right? That's because over here on the left, if we click our little ellipses, the 3 dots, we can choose a theme. Here's some out-of-the-box themes. I like purple, right? Okay, and it says, hey, do you want to apply this to classic controls? I'm like, yes, I want to do that. And if this failed on me the other day when it died. There we go. It actually did it. It applies the theme to everything. Like all of our stuff that we have here, it actually applies the theme to all the things that have colors. I can also customize the theme, right? And I have no idea what the RGB value for University of Alabama, but I know it's a crimson kind of red color, right? And so I'm going to choose that, but it's a little different than red. And so we can also choose the font for this theme. Let's make it Georgia. There's torsion and vibrancy, right? Like what does this look like? So as we adjust it, we can see what this looks like, right? So I'm going to add some vibrancy to that. Torsion, if we mouse over that little eye, it says, it fades the tint and shade, especially on the lighter color. So as we increase it, we can kind of see that to where if we're using lighter colors, it adds more tone of the oranges in there. If we do less, it adds more red on the lighter colors. And so that looks pretty neat. We can, as hex codes or RGB values, right? And then lock primary color. That's a cool one, right? And that way it just uses the primary color, or we can use these adjustments. But also at the bottom, we can click that preview and we can see a sample of what this is going to look like in our app itself. So we use Georgia as a font. I like Georgia as a font, but it's not exactly the best with screen readers. And so we're like, okay, well, what about Courier New, right? Old school, like taking it on back, has the biggest type width when we're typing papers back in high school. This is what it looks like, very typewriter-ish. Like, I don't really like that one either. And so, we could pick a different one. It's like good old Verdana. What does that look like? That looks pretty good. But I'm going to flip it back to Georgia because I really enjoy Georgia. And we do that, and it automatically applies it, right? If we were doing this in the Classic app, we'd be typing here all day, trying to go to every control, make sure it references the appropriate font size, the colors. We would be here for days doing that. Now we can just do it as applied theme. And notice we have U of A right here as a theme option, and we can quickly switch the themes back. Now the themes we can't push into other apps. It's specific to the app. So kind of downside of that. And let's see, we're at 11:30, right? We go to 11:45. Yep. Okay. So we got 15 minutes here. Let's see some other cool things that we're going to do here. Let's do this. So we've created directly from a SharePoint site. We've created for both of these, straight out of the box, ready to go, all that kind of jazz. The other thing that we could do is that we can, in fact, I'm going to just open a new Power Apps over here like that. One of the things also before I keep moving forward is that we have our save button over here. So if we click save, if it doesn't have a name, it just says, oh, hey, app. Well, let's give it a name, right? And so we're going to say, Emma, student works, and click save. But once we save, and you can see a little spinner happening up here, we're going to go ahead and once that hits, we'll want to click publish. And we'll let it do its safe thing. Okay, it's finished. And we'll click the publish. And it says, hey, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, yes. Thing is that we may also want to put a description. This is a new function using Copilot within Power Platform. And please note, it does not require a premium license for this. It's embedded natively with the within the Power Platform. Copilot is able to use the GPT models to say, hey, let me look at the data that you're collecting, at your data sources you're connected to, what data is in there, how it's organized. You have student orgs up here, and let me create that description for you. I click that, and it says, and it creates a very nice natural language description of that. So facilitate seamless management of student organizations at the University of Alabama Student Orgs app. Search, view, manage, detailed records, etc. Right? Like, okay, that's cool. That looks good. And just click publish version. You'll see the spinner going on. The other nice thing is that once you save it once, it'll do an auto save every 2 minutes, right? Don't depend on that. Say you're working in the cloud, save and save often. But most of the time when I'm done doing something, typing something, adding a data connection, I go to click save, it's already saved. So this auto save function has gotten a heck of a lot better over the last 3.5, 4 years. And so the other thing I want to draw your attention to is the app checker. Right? We have the same thing in Power Automate with Flow Checker to kind of check for errors and things. But when we're building applications, there's a lot of other things that we should pay attention to as well. So notice we have some groupings here. We have data source, performance, accessibility, runtime, and formula. So it's doing a check right now. Notice formula, it says 1. While it's checking, I'm going to click into it. And notice it has a warning, and it says main screen 1. Delegation warning, the search, and I'm like, what is that? If I click on it, it actually takes it directly to the warning itself. And if I click on this little right arrow, it expands what the issue is. And so just if anybody knows the answer, please come off mute. Does anyone know what this delegation warning means and how delegation is used in Power Apps? If you do, come off mute and say what it is. So delegation means that we're querying against the data source, but we don't have indexed columns, meaning that if we don't have an indexed columns, we're going to have a problem with large data sets, meaning that Canvas apps can only, just like Power Automate, they live on OData. We're querying that. The maximum number of records that this query is going to be able to use for search on the title field is going to be a maximum of 2,000 records. So if we have a SharePoint list with 10,000 or even 2001, it's only going to be able to look at the first 2,000 records to apply this search. And it's because of the function. Delegation within the functions within SharePoint is well documented. You can just go to any search engine or ask Copilot, hey, Power Apps, search, right? And so if we open a new tab and we just say Power Apps, search, or filter. I really like filter because it's all the same piece. This very first Learn document, it's going to bring us directly to the filter, search, and lookup functions. And I'll drop that into the chat window. Just so you know, these are all the Power FX functions over here on the left that we can use in Power Apps and Power Automate because it's from the Power FX piece. But as we scroll down in this description, it tells us about it. But the next section is delegation. Kind of goes into what it means, and then we have a delegation overview, which tells us more explicitly what we can and can't do. And so being able to query 2,000 records, default is going to be 500. So to only look at the first 500 records. I always up it to 2000 just so that, hey, I know this is going to work at least through testing, and we can address the delegation issue at a later date once we get all the fine stuff tuned out. And then it has delegable sources and how it would work on various pieces. So if I click on SharePoint here, it's going to tell me what functions are delegable or not. The search function is not delegable in SharePoint. Filter is, lookup, starts with is, but search is not. So search isn't going to work, but that's a contains operation, super powerful one. But if I were to look at Dataverse, for example, and look at the search function, it is delegable on string fields, on text fields. So if I'm utilizing Dataverse and want to search through 10,000 records, it's going to do it. But the nice thing is that delegation says we're going to perform that on the server side, wherever the data lives. We're going to do the filtering over there and then bring it back into Power Apps versus Power Apps bringing in the data and then attempting to search, right? So that latter method might take much more time consuming. So the next thing that I'm going to do here to build out, let's see if I can find it. There we go. Is I'm going to use Copilot. Okay, and so I did this the other day working with another customer just to kind of say, hey, let's see if we can see if this new feature is out. And so when I come to make.powerapps.com and I'm at the home button, instead of using one of these, I'm just going to use Copilot. So I'm going to ask it. It's like, will you build me an app for organizing student, and I'm going to student events in University of Alabama across multiple student organizations with designated approvers and event managers. I don't know if you guys do that a lot where you just hit the enter key really and your hands fly up. It's very gratifying. At least it is for me, especially when we're watching Copilot kind of do its thing. So what I'm expecting this to do, and look, it did. It's beautiful. And this is brand new. This was announced at the Power Platform Conference. And this was the other day was the first time I saw this. And we knew it was coming. Like we knew it was, we had known that, oh, hey, we're going to be able to do this feature. They kind of hinted at it at a couple of the other, like at Microsoft Build in May. The ability for us to be able to bring in and use Copilot to create an app with relational databases. And that's exactly what we built here. And so we have approvers, we have student organizations, and we have events. And so let me zoom in a bit so we can kind of see what we have here. So we have our events, and we can take a look at our relationship. So many to one organization. So an organization can have many events. Awesome. The approver, you're going to have an approver for multiple organizations, right? And so it natively does this. It builds that relationship. The other piece of this, it says, okay, well, that's amazing. We've got this information. It's like, let's see. I want to also create a table that are other colleges, departments at the university for student organizations. And so what that should do, and it may do it, right? But I haven't done it in this method. The other one I did was basically a case management system. But what this is doing is saying, okay, we've got department and we've got college, right? It created that, right? Departments and colleges. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But the thing is that I need to relate the department, or let's see, the student organization table. And notice I'm misspelling on purpose to the colleges. And so it's going to say, okay, let me see if I can build that relationship. And it did. So it built colleges to student organizations, right? And then you can also build potentially a relationship between student organizations and department, right? And we can ask that. We can say, relate the departments also to the student. And we can kind of take a look and see how this is going to build. And so it builds our relational database for us, but it's all in the Dataverse, right? So you can build this in a developer plan environment, right? Which allows us to have premium licensing without the premium expense, but it's only for you. It's a sandbox just for you to be able to test and build these types of things to see if it works. This looks good to me. And so I want to make sure my tables are named appropriately. That looks great. Let's see. I'm going to click save and open up top. And it's going to say, hey, are you done working? Yep, I'm done. And so what it's going to do is it's going to create my Dataverse tables, and it's going to create me a Canvas app mapped to my new relational database that I just built. So while the wheels are spinning here, any thoughts, ideas, questions? All ideas and thoughts are happy and accepted. Would anybody find this useful? You don't have to come up. You can hit the thumbs up. They don't have a thumbs down, but you know. And here's the other part of this, right? I'm not sure where Copilot lies at the University of Alabama, but these Copilot features that we have available in the Power Platform, they are not dependent on Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses. Copilot is this building concept with Microsoft Copilot in the Power Platform is natively integrated into the Power Platform. Now, if you don't have a premium Power Apps license in a regular sandbox or production environment, you won't be able to create these Dataverse tables. But in your developer environment, like I'm in this one, right? Let me click over to another window here. And so if I click over here to this Nick IT Guru, says it right here across the top. This is a developer environment and not meant for production use. It's a playground for me. I have the ability, and you do too, to be able to, in your playground, your sandbox, to be able to come in and build these Dataverse tables and use Copilot to be able to do it. If you wanted Copilot to just create you an app connected to SharePoint, right? Connected to SharePoint, you could do that. You could ask Copilot to do it. It's a function within Power Platform that we built in natively. And the nice thing is that we've had this, and we've had natural language to create flows to be able to, like, hey, create me an approval flow connected to a SharePoint list, right? We've had the ability to do that for like 5 years. It has been a native part of Power Automate for many years, but it's grown from that into what Copilot is today. That was one of the starting points of being able to use natural language to create flows. So bear with me here. We got a minute left. This thing is loading. And so it's creating our data sources. We're creating our app and adding. Takes a little bit longer because we are creating Dataverse tables, right? And so we can see here's a welcome screen. And if we click our preview, there's our student organizations, approvers, different colleges. If I click on student organizations, it gives us a listing with demo data of student organizations. Oh, wow. Okay, that's cool. Let me click home. Let me go into colleges. What does that have? College of Arts, Business, Science, Law, Engineering, right? And then events. We've got some in here, right? Student organization is Tech Club, right? And so we can build we can build some lookups in here to show like, hey, show me, what college is this from, right? We didn't tell it that we wanted it connected to the college. And so it's not an actual field, but we can build that in. Oh, hey, what college is this? Cool. what is the student organization connected to? And so we could say, okay, well, let's look at student orgs. It has College of Engineering. So if we look at Tech Club, that one's in the College of Engineering. There's College of Science, there's College of Arts, right? So they're connected via the database. Not exactly on the events, but that might be something we want to be able to connect to, right? So that brings us to time, 11:45, 11:46. Any last thoughts, questions, ideas before we wrap up today?